Trying this again. Good morning, beautiful ones. Hope you're having a fantastic day. I'm going to talk a little bit about the psychic experience. In upcoming weeks, there's going to be some exciting things going on, so stay tuned for that. I'm going to be hosting at some point. I don't have a set date just yet, but I'm going to be hosting some discussion about weight and body image. This isn't necessarily going to be about losing weight, but about the commentary that we receive on, just, it doesn't matter what size you are. When I was thinner, people would tell me I needed to lose weight. So, I want to delve into the body image so that we can be more comfortable in our own skin and be happier with who we are, rather than trying to mold ourselves to society standards. And by that, we can make choices that are better geared around ourselves and our own well-being. So with that being said, today's topic, I forgot, the psychic experience. It's a lot different than what people think it is, and it's different for every single person. And I'm very empathic, so I'm basically collecting every single thing that I come across, and it's frustrating at times because I forget to ground. I forget to take care of myself. I forget to diffuse. Even being in this line of work, it's really important that I diffuse, because otherwise I'm going to be reading on my own stuff, or I'm going to be reading on somebody else's stuff when I'm doing readings. So for clients, I diffuse. For myself, it's really hard to do that. And so, so I'm dealing with a lot right now. I'm just all over the place because there's so much that I want to talk about, and I'm trying to condense it. So, let me talk about being empathic for a moment. You may have seen the meme going around saying something to the effect of, everybody's empathic, it's not anything special. I want you to think about this for a moment. Think about when you have gone to somebody and told them something very, very sensitive, and how they may have reacted. Not everybody is empathic, and that is proof. Part of the proof is we know that certain people we don't want to tell our business to, because they're not going to care. They're not going to be empathic. They're not going to sympathize or empathize. They're just going to be like, it's your problem, or it's your fault, or, whatever the case may be. So not everybody has the ability to be empathic in the psychic or spiritual sense, and not everybody is empathic in the sense of basic human decency, which is unfortunate. But moving on, this is something that I want to talk about, and I want to make it clear that I am not trying to diagnose or create any kind of medical discussion. This is strictly what one of my teachers had said when I was taking some classes, and it was an English class. We know synesthesia to be two things, same way as empathy. You can be empathic in that spiritual and psychic sense, or you can be empathic in the basic sense of human decency. With synesthesia, it can be a condition, or it can be a literary device. So when we say terms like loud shirt, loud tie, or something that combines two senses. So in the term of loud shirt, we know that the colors are very vibrant, that they just scream from across the room. We are mixing the senses of sound and sight. There are so many other examples of that. Sharp cheddar, a flavor that has bite, which is kind of sort of mixing senses, but it's kind of in line with the same thing. When we blend two senses, or two or more senses, that is the literary device known as synesthesia, where it paints a picture. And there's also the terminology of synesthesia, where we experience our senses as being blended in some way. Mine is largely colors and flavors, so that's why I love blue, as you can see. Plus, it's just a tranquil color, but marine life in general has that kind of flavor of like a blue juice. You know, that's the only way that I can describe it. It's kind of a refreshing, quenching kind of color, and sound. So words and sounds resonate very strongly with me. Certain voices will have a flavor, not all, but when it comes to voices, certain voices have a flavor, but not necessarily. I don't know how to explain it, because sometimes a voice will have a flavor, but words individually have a flavor. So it's kind of like something very separate but similar. The one that comes to mind, Judge Judy, tastes like peppermint patties or junior mints. Sometimes there is a discernment when something has one or the other flavor because of texture and things like that, but also the words that she uses have very different flavors. So it's kind of like things jumping around. Anyway, moving on. So this English teacher I had was talking about literary devices, and she talked about synesthesia, and she talked about being able to synergize information and connect it, and how senses are connected when it comes to synesthesia. And by that notion, if you're connected in that way, theoretically, you can make all kinds of connections. And then she said something that really resonated with me. Again, I want to say I'm not diagnosing anything. I am not claiming that this is medical advice in any way, nor is it to treat any condition. But she said in that case that sometimes, how did she phrase it? Sometimes when we are so interconnected and we can see all of these things that are interwoven, we can basically become a little bit delusional, because there is a fine line between reality and fiction. I say this in the sense of using our imaginations. So again, I really do want to emphasize no medical condition is being treated or diagnosed here. But I see that for myself. And being empathic in that way can be very confusing, because I feel everything, and lately I have been struggling a lot with certain things that have been in the news years ago. I don't want to get into it because I feel like it's not mine to discuss, but I am feeling it. So I'm seeking out news articles. I'm reading everything that I can about it to try to make sense of what I'm feeling. I'm getting names and images of people, and when I say names, I should say it was one name and one image, and it turned out that these two people were connected to the news story that I was reading about. And I just am having, actually, the name I got also was a major name. I didn't know that name because it was such an in-depth news story that I never really took the time to read up on it in that way. So it was a name that I wasn't familiar with. I don't think it was a name that I had heard in passing either. Because, you know, sometimes we don't really take time to delve into something. We just kind of take it on the superficial level. And so this has been intense. One that I will discuss, because it was so long ago that I feel comfortable in talking about it, was Titanic. I had become so engrossed in that I couldn't shake it for a while. And I wasn't getting names. I wasn't getting anything like that, but I was getting other things that were going on. And I know that there's nobody, or at least I wouldn't think that there would be anybody that is trying to come through to give me a message to relay to anybody at this point. I just don't see that. I feel that that's more empathic. But why was that coming to me at such a random time? I really don't know, because there was no anniversary of it at the time. It just randomly popped up. So, I really have to discern mediumship from being an empath, and it can sometimes feel like it's too much, where I feel these pins and needles constantly about almost being brought to tears. And this is not a new experience for me. What is new is the pain of varying situations. So this is where things get very personal. As I said, I am very cautious about what I reveal, because I don't want to infringe upon anybody else's pain or anybody else's experience, and I don't want to bring those things up for them. But in my own journey, I had at one point read everything that I could about River Phoenix, because I lost a nephew. And he was kind of a public figure. He was a little bit known. And through that, I was trying so hard to come to terms with his passing that I became so engrossed in trying to transfer those emotions to make sense of it in some way. That was not easy. I knew where it was coming from. I discussed this with my psychic friends, and they told me that made perfect sense. But there's little things like that, things that I'm trying to come to terms with on my own. And through that, sometimes if it's something I can't face personally, it comes in the wave of me looking at media, looking at the news, looking at famous people or famous situations, and trying to get a handle on my own observations, my own feelings, my own whatever. And sometimes I can feel it more through looking at something objectively. And by objective, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to feel it. It means sometimes I can feel it more strongly than when I'm feeling it for myself. Because if I'm feeling it for myself, I got blocks going up. I'm in denial. I don't want to face it because it's too painful and too heart-wrenching. So in that aspect, instead of facing it head on, I'm looking at something that parallels the unexpected. I'm looking at something that parallels the trauma that I am experiencing through not having been there, but to be able to empathize with others who are going through that. And by that, I'm able to come to terms a little bit and kind of sort of accept what's going on. A lot of what I'm picking up on now, I'm regressing to a certain point in my life where things had hope, and where things were a little bit different, and where I was just in a totally different space, where I was younger. When we're younger, we don't quite have that sense of limitations. We don't quite have that sense of being as cynical. There were aspects of me that were more cynical than I am now. But at the time, I had hope to grow out of that cynicism and to create a life for myself. And, as life sometimes leads us down, tributaries of paths that don't quite go as we want, it comes down to this point of trying to come to terms with that age, because there are parts of my aura or whatever, I don't know, but there are parts that are stuck at that age, and that age starts to manifest as just as an example, buying things that remind me of that carefree time in my life, or surrounding myself with things that kind of keep me stuck at that age because I'm not able to grow past that particular trauma. And so this is why I'm feeling like there's a lot of things going on where I'm having difficulty making sense of it, as to why, but this is how this particular thing affected me personally. The Titanic, I really don't know. I am going to mention this because this isn't something so personal that that it should be withheld. But I have a friend who's like super into Titanic, and I was going through a list of people that had drowned on Titanic. Well, not just drowned, but had been on the Titanic. And there was one person, and I'm not sure if it's pronounced Noel or Noel. Well, the name struck me. I clicked it. I looked at it, and it looked like my friend, and some resemblances of my friend. And there's a lot of people that I see that remind me of her so much, but in this particular case, it was just like that was the name that stood out, and so it was very coincidental, or maybe there was more to it, I don't know. But when I sent her the information on this person, it seemed like it may have resonated in a way, because she always thought maybe she was on the Titanic, because she had certain things that came in terms of feeling of losing things, losing art, losing her belongings, because a lot of people did have some expensive belongings on the ship. But what really got me was that she had a plaque with that very name, because that was her favorite name, and she said that if she ever had children, she would name them Noel or Noel. I think it was Noel, because I can't remember. Anyway, I know the spelling. I can't remember the pronunciation, because I've known people by different pronunciations, but same spelling or similar. So anyway, little things like that. These synchronicities that come up for us. But why would Titanic be coming up for me lately? Because when I did the reading on that, nothing came up in regards to that. When I did the reading, it was more for her peace of mind, or not even peace of mind. We were just seeing what came up, really, just out of a curiosity more than anything. And so it seemed like it was very in passing. But as far as why it was coming up at this particular point, there must be something in there that I was working through personally, and it helped me to objectively view Titanic. And so I just kind of wanted to talk about those experiences, because there's so many different ways that people go through the psychic experience. Sometimes a song will kind of take you back, and this is something else that is really strong and can be almost painful at times, and I don't know why. I'll hear a song, and all of a sudden I'll be back at some random place that I remember going, and I'm thinking, was that song on the radio? I was like 5 at the time, maybe a little bit older, but was that song playing? And it would make sense, because it would have been a popular song at the time. But there's a few songs that just bring me back. One is Eyes Without a Face. It takes me back to this random time where me and my brother, he took me to like Peter Piper Pizza or something, and I had one like this little toy green flute, and we went to visit my grandparents. And it's weird, because all of a sudden when that song plays, I'll be on that road going to that area, and I know that that's like so weird and so random. There's a couple other songs that kind of take me back to that, or just little snapshots of things. And sometimes what gets really confusing is when it's somewhere that I know, but when it's somewhere I know, but somewhere that I've never been, or sometimes even someplace that I don't even know. It's just a random place that just pops up. So, could be past life things, and, all these other types of experiences, and I have no idea sometimes. It's a lot easier for me to read other people, because I don't have the bias that I have with myself where I'm blocking it off. It's easier for me to kind of see things with other people, because I think that I don't have to try to make sense of a lifetime of information coupled with a lifetime of emotions, which is like double or triple or quadruple of what we normally experience in the physical sense. Because emotions can happen at, a split second and be rife with all these conflicting ideas and conflicting feelings and whatnot. So when we're trying to make sense of things for ourselves, it's intense. It is just so intense. And then not only that, we're looking at past lives as well. I'm going to jump back to ancient Egypt really quickly because this is something that constantly comes up. I don't see past lives as far as ancient Egypt with everybody. Then again, I'm not always looking, and it does take energy to look, so I'm not always in that place where I can like tune in. But ever since I was little, as soon as I had learned about pyramids and Egypt, I was just always fascinated, and it just was captivating to me. So a few years back, I was at the flea market, and there was a painting or a picture or something of ancient Egypt, and I'm over there, and I'm like, I stopped in my tracks and looked at it, and it was so strange to me because I literally stopped, and I realized that behavior. It struck me. I was actually being mindful in that moment, which, sometimes I'm not, I'm going to be honest. But it struck me that I stopped, and I noticed in that moment how many times before I had done that. How many times I just felt gripped by Egypt. And I thought, I bet I got a past life over there. So at some point, a friend of mine and I were talking, and she said, oh, it's just, Egypt is so occult, and it unsettled her. And I said something, I said, I'm drawn to it very much. And we were walking, and she stopped me, and she's like, you're kidding. She says, me too. She says, there's something unsettling about it for her. But at the same time, she was drawn to it, that she felt that she had a past life there. Well, I think that maybe that was the part that felt occult to her, was that she remembered it. And so, all these little things just kind of pop up. Well, I have noticed that so many of my friends who, and my friends and people who say they feel something like a connection with me, but they're not sure what it is, so many of them are like identifying a past life in Egypt. So many of them think back to that, and they can like remember little pieces or feel a familiarity with it in some way, like they were there before. Some people were there, and they were there in a totally different time than I was, because I don't remember them from that time. Some of those people may have been there but didn't like me and still don't. So, I mean, it's interesting. Our rivals can come back up, and sometimes we forget that they're rivals because they feel familiar to us, and we're like, oh, I know this person from some other place, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh, wait, yeah, I remember. So, I mean, there's so many different aspects of past life. I was not, I believe in Egypt, I was a male, so I just feel that way. I've seen my hands, like, looking down, and it was hot, and I was talking to people, or, just kind of enjoying the marketplaces, and at that time, I think there was bartering. I don't think that we actually, used coins or anything like that at the time. I'm not sure, because I don't know at what time period. I'm going to show this off real quickly, because this is, something to kind of emphasize my feelings toward Egypt. And I do have among my beach, because the main thing I have here is beach. I have a little bit of a goth section. But I think mainly I was trying to go for tranquility and, marine life. What's more tranquil than that? And something that's conducive to relaxation and concentration. So, blue just made sense. But this is one of my little drawings that you know, was just trying to make some kind of abstract whatever. And this was, I think, before I realized that there was a possible past life there. There's my little scarab up in the corner. I wanted to make it look kind of like stained glass. And if you put it up to the light, there's no backing on it, so it does kind of have a little bit of a glow. But yeah, so I mean, you can kind of see a couple little images in there, but for the most part, I was just focusing on getting this image out. And so yeah, I'm very drawn to that. Like I said, I have a couple of other little, I have a statue of Bast. I have a little box that I have somewhere else, and it's in another room. I have like some of my spiritual stuff in a different area, but it's a little box, and it has like a interpretation, or not interpretation, depiction of Anubis. And I have a sarcophagus, and I mentioned Bast, and things like that. So I'm very drawn to that time period. Maybe it's something, maybe not. But I did kind of want to elaborate on the psychic experience today. Because why not? I want to kind of get into the idea of self-care being not just what we are doing in the physical plane, but also taking care of ourselves spiritually. Because, people can tell us all day long that it's not real, but we notice a difference. If we're in tune, we notice a difference when we take that time to ground. We notice the difference when we are out and about, and we are coming across all these energies, and all of a sudden we just feel like this intensity of wanting to cry out of the blue. No reason for it, just something, we know. And sometimes when we are spiritual, it's also really important to not tell people, well, you need to ground, or to kind of know our limitations and our boundaries, because that's not for everybody, and not everybody's going to be receptive to it. And sometimes people are going to feel as if we're minimizing what they're going through, when it's not about minimizing per se, but sometimes it's about knowing when we need to coddle somebody, and when our advice isn't going to be helpful, or when it's not going to be received. So, understanding that this may be right for me, but it may not be right for everybody, is really important. Like I said, it's not for everybody, and it can be construed as diminishing somebody else's issues and what somebody else is going through. But for those of us who have been in practice, we know what it's like to hear a song and flash back to some place that we're like, okay, where did that come from? Or to see a picture or an image and just all of a sudden just be transported, and to feel those prickles all over. Or to be swept away with a news story or an emotion or something that just for some reason gets to us. And it could be at times, this is something else to think about. Sometimes we just have a draw to something, and sometimes it's just natural. There are certain periods in history where I'm very drawn to, but I don't feel that I was there. It's a very different feeling that I can't quite explain, kind of a familiarity. But, in really putting it into perspective and really thinking about those things, how many times have we heard a news story, like tens of billions and thousands of times, that we don't resonate with? We just hear it, and it's on that superficial level where we don't take the time to really think about it or look into it deeper and that kind of thing. And how many times have we just out of the blue become obsessed with it for some reason? Even even reading a book that's about a topic or about a person might really kickstart an interest in that person. But it doesn't always mean that there's something to it. It could be maybe something that we've heard, or something that pops up, and in passing we start to become a little bit obsessive with it maybe. But it just kind of depends on the situation, because there are a lot of times when I can pinpoint something popping up that I'm like, okay, it was at this point or this period of my life that I'm trying to come to terms with, or trying to understand deeper through that objectivity. And there's times when it's just because something fascinated me about it. James Dean is one of those where at times it was just this fascination. Rudolph Valentino, it's another one that I'm just fascinated with because of their charisma, or thinking about what could have been if they had had a longer life and a longer career. So, lots of different things coming up there. But I, like I said, just wanted to kind of talk about that. Everybody's got their own unique experience. And pretty soon I'm going to be working toward that workshop with talking about image, talking about, image and weight, specifically weight. And I don't want to make this for just people who are on the plus side of weight like myself, but I want to kind of incorporate all aspects of that, because for some of us, we have been thinner, and even when we're thinner, we're told we should lose more weight, or people who didn't know us before still have judgments and don't see all the work that we did, so we feel like we have to lose more weight, and it just becomes this cycle where we're beating ourselves up and trying to come to terms with accepting ourselves. And it's hard to do when we have all this judgment, and when people don't stop to think about what they're saying, or even little comments like, wow, you've really lost weight. That can be difficult to hear, especially when the same person always coddled our ego by saying, oh, you look fine. So, just making sense of that for ourselves so that we can decide if we're happy at our weight, or so that we can shed what is holding us back and say, you know what, it's time for a change. But ultimately, whatever we decide, whether we're happy with ourselves as is, whether we want to be healthier, whatever it is, it comes back to us, for us to be able to kind of navigate a world that is always wanting more of us, and wanting and expecting more of us, and putting such staunch stipulations on what we're supposed to look like, and that whole thing. So this is about kind of coming from within and embracing who we are, and knowing that our decisions is ours alone, that it doesn't really concern anybody else what we do, and just being happy. So with that being said, I am out for the day, and I wish everybody a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and I will chat with y'all again soon.